Hey guys, I hope you're all doing well. In this week's video, we are going to talk about stimulation, overstimulation, understimulation, and stimming. What does it all mean and how does it relate to people with autism, such as myself? Also, before we get into the video, let's just note that I got adorable pinup girl bangs and an undercut, which you can't really see, but you can see the full designs on my Instagram, That Chronic Illness Life. So if you want to check it out, go follow me there. And without further ado, let's get into it. So what does the word stimulate mean? To stimulate means, according to dictionary.com, to rouse something to action or to encourage. So for example, if you were to, I don't know, walk into a room and smell cookies baking, your sense of smell would be stimulated as if something is making it work, right? People with autism usually have some sort of stimulation issue though. You can be overstimulated or understimulated. I personally get overstimulated quite a lot, so later in this video I will be showing you, to the best of my ability, what it feels like to me when I'm overstimulated. So, overstimulation versus understimulation. It's pretty much what it sounds like. Overstimulation means too much stimulation for your body. God, you know when you say a word too many times and it stops sounding like a word? That's me with stimulation right now. Anyway, so overstimulated means the stimuli around you in your environment that to a neurotypical person wouldn't affect them feel like way too much for an autistic person, such as me. So you may notice that some autistic people are averse to touch or certain textures and things like that. Those people get overstimulated very easily. I have become better over the years. I think I mentioned in my autism video, but when I was a child, if I was overstimulated, it would actually cause me to vomit, which was fun, and feel like in my chest. So I couldn't go to concerts or movie theaters because the sounds would be painful, like physically painful in my chest. Nowadays, it's much easier, but I do still get nauseous sometimes, or just uncomfortable, and it go into what I call shutdown mode, so I can't really speak. It's quite similar to when I'm dissociating from some sort of psychiatric trigger, but as opposed to a psychiatric trigger, if you get me out of the overstimulating environment, I usually calm down quite quickly, whereas if I'm triggered by something of a psychiatric nature, it can take quite a while for me to stop dissociating, and I usually need to be like called back, if that makes sense. Technically, a trigger is also a type of stimuli, but we're going to talk about psychiatric stimuli in a different episode, I think. So that's overstimulation. Understimulation is pretty much the opposite. No matter what you do, you don't feel enough, and so you're trying to feel. I get this as well when, as I mentioned, I dissociate. So if you know me quite well, you might notice when I dissociate, I start digging my nails into my palms because I feel very numb to everything and I want to feel something. Now, this is not a good method and I do not recommend it. My therapist has recommended getting something like ice cubes to hold because that shocks your system into feeling, but it doesn't hurt you. Other people with autism who may be constantly understimulated may be doing things to try and get that stimulated feeling. So they, on the other hand, will love being touched. They'll love eating like loud foods or that feel a certain way. Sometimes they might even, you may have seen an autistic person when they get upset hit themselves. That's also a type of stimulation, which brings us to the next term, which is stimming. Stimming is also short for stimulation in that they are looking for stimulation or doing something to get that feeling. So stimming is a repetitive motion that feels good to an autistic person. Now, it depends on the type of person you are. If you were like me and you became very self-conscious of it, you might stop stimming. So I only stim when I am in private. I'm not comfortable demonstrating it here on camera, but I can tell you that when I get really happy, I will move my wrists quite quickly and I jump up and down. And that to me is the most fantastic feeling. It's like all the happiness in the world is coming into you. And it's so fantastic that you have to kind of move along with it to express it to the world, if that makes sense. I don't know if it does, but that's the best way I can describe it. Other types of stims include, as I said, the self-injury, which of course is a harmful stim. If you are autistic and that's something you do, I would recommend talking to your doctor or therapist to try and find a stim that feels similar but is less harmful. They have stim toys. You may have seen those fidget spinners that were quite popular a few years back. I know a lot of people make fun of them, but they're actually great for neurodivergent people to get the stims. Other stims include chew necklaces. You can wear them and, like, you know, chew on them. That's what chewing is. They also have stim toys, which I use. I don't know why, but when I go to therapy and I'm talking about difficult things, if I use a stim toy, it's easier for me to talk about the bad things. So I use a stim cube, and each side has a different thing on it to stim. So there's like a ball you can roll. There's a joystick that you can click. There's a couple of buttons to push, and I'm blanking. There's like a finger indent that you can rub, things like that. So all of these are meant to stimulate your senses in order to get you into some sort of equilibrium. Because while a neurotypical person, as I mentioned, is usually quite equal in terms of their stimuli, autistic people are usually over or under and need help. So if someone you know is over or understimulated, how can you help them? Now, as I said, I'm not too familiar with being understimulated, but I can tell you that if someone is understimulated and trying to stim in a harmful way, you want to try and distract them from that if you can, if they are comfortable with it. I'm not saying if you see someone that you should go up to them and start talking to them, but if this is someone you know well and they trust you and they're doing a stim that is injuring them in some way, I would ask their doctor or therapist, or them, obviously they're like the first person you want to ask, what kind of thing they would like you to do to help, because sometimes you get caught in a sort of loop and you can't get out of it. But obviously if you're hitting yourself constantly, that's not healthy and that's not something you want to encourage. So if you or someone you know engages in self-injurious stims, I would recommend going to a therapist or doctor as soon as possible. Now, if your friend is overstimulated, or if you are overstimulated, that is something I have much more experience with. So one of my tells is if I start getting anxious or overstimulated or I'm dissociating, whatever, I start moving my hands a lot and I start trying to hide my face because I feel very vulnerable. So if I start doing that, you might want to ask, hey, is everything okay? Can I help? If I start rubbing my head, I get headaches a lot, that sort of thing. And if I say, yes, I'm overstimulated, if I'm starting to shut down, it might be hard for me to talk, and I will try to communicate this, but if I can't, just keep talking to me slowly, and I will try to type, or I talk like this, because it's like hard for my brain to connect to my mouth. So be patient, and then the best thing to do is to get them out of the overstimulating environment. So last night I was in a restaurant that was very, very bright and very loud, and there were lots of smells and lots of sights, and so I started shutting down. So I told my friend and I said, we need to go to somewhere quiet. So it might be tempting to try and like comfort them by touching them. Don't do that. If someone is already overstimulated, the last thing they want is more stimulation, and touching counts as stimulation. So if you were to touch me when I was overstimulated, I will probably go like this, or go like try to back away, right? If I'm already overstimulated and a really loud sound comes, it's not uncommon for me to scream or start crying, depending on how overstimulated my brain already is. I hope that makes sense. And for the rest of the video, I'm going to show you guys, to the best of my ability, what it feels like to me when I am overstimulated. So for a neurotypical person, like the restaurant I was in yesterday, it might be kind of loud, so it's annoying because you can't really hear the people you're sitting with, and a little bit bright, but nothing that causes pain. It's not like that for me. Thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you found my explanation as well as my little demonstration interesting. Please, if you want to and you like my stuff, follow me here on YouTube or on any of my other links below. I am on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, and TikTok, as well as Tumblr. I hope you guys are having a great day, month, week, whatever, and I will see you next Sunday. Bye.